welcome to part 2 of the cat game. At the end of the last video, we programmed the scripts for the cat sprite to be able to move left and right along the boardwalk and jump. So with the space key. So now that we have those, and then of course we have the variables life and score created and initialized on the stage script. Let's go look at that. Now it's time to introduce the other game objects. So remember we talked about losing lives by being hit by a rolling ball, and then scoring by touching or capturing or collecting. Those are all different words for the same meaning. Think of a Mario game where he's collecting coins. Same idea. And then we have to decide what are the thresholds for winning and losing. Well, life is easy. When you get down to 0 lives, game over, you lose. But if before your lives are over, you score more than 5 points, we're going to say that's a win. And we already have our stage backgrounds all set for winning and losing screens. So with that, it's time to start coding the rest of this game. So let's go grab a new sprite for our enemy. So I like to use the baseball sprite, and there he is. So here's the idea. The concept is we want this ball to just appear from the left side of the stage and roll across and then disappear. That's the action. But then we'll need some code that says if at any time on the stage the cat touches the ball, then that triggers a loss of life. So those are 2 different scripts, one to control the motion of the ball and a different script to control the interaction between the cat and this enemy ball. So let's begin coding. When we first start the program, it's a control block, it's our event block, and we're going to need a couple of those. So I'll just drag 2 out. We're going to develop 2 scripts here. Let's do the motion of the ball first. When we first start the program, we want the ball to be hidden. So we don't want to see it yet. But we do want it to repeatedly do the following. So repeatedly means in a forever block. Remember, this script is going to control the ball going back and forth, not back and forth, but just left to right for the entire game. So that's why we need the forever block. So what do we need to do? Well, first we're going to initialize his location. So we'll have him go to, what do we want to have him go to? Let's pick a very far left. Now he's hiding, so I want to see him. So I'm going to go to the looks block and just click show, and that'll show the ball. We want him to be roughly right there. So where is that location? I'm going to say negative 220, and the y, let's make him about a negative. About a negative 70, negative 80, somewhere in there. So let's program this block, and we'll just change the values inside the block after we drag it over. So the motion block, now that we know roughly where we want them, these are the XY coordinates, we can adjust as needed. So in this loop that runs constantly, first we have the cat go to this XY address, we'll just say negative 80. And negative 218, negative 220, it's all the same, doesn't really matter. Remember, the stage is 240 to the left and 240 to the right for a total width of 480. Remember the XY grid? We want this ball to sort of, in time, randomly appear. So we're going to have him wait a random amount of time. How do we do that? Well, it turns out in the operators palette there is a random number picker. So all you got to do is pick the start and stop. So let's wait between 1 and 3 seconds for the ball to regenerate on the left side of the screen. And so now when that happens, we're going to have him appear. So this is where we click show. And now the motion from left to right is going to be a glide. because that's a smooth movement over a fixed amount of time, we're going to have him glide to a specific XY location. Now we want the Y to stay the same, so we want that to be still negative 80. And the X is going to be way over here. So where's that? Looks like 249, 250. Great. So I'll just say 250. But we want this to be a positive 250. So remember, the ball is going from the left side of the screen to the right side. And when so remember, he starts over here, he's hidden. Then we have him go to this location, he shows, he glides, and now we want him to hide. So hide is in the looks. Boom. And that's it. That's the action of the ball. That gets him rolling left and right. Let's play this and see what happens. So the ball's moving kind of fast. There is a random wait time between 1 and 3 seconds for when that ball reappears. We don't want it to be consistent because that will just make it easier for the player. So let's make this ball a little bit slower. So let's have him glide 3 seconds. And actually you can create a variable called speed, and you can put the speed variable right there and make a slider control. So we can make another control up here with a slider variable that you can use to control the ball speed. So that'd just be an additional enhancement of this game. Alright, now let's program the cat interaction so he can lose lives. So once again, a forever block, because we want this to be monitored throughout the entire game. So if at any time in the game, it's an if block. So again, here's a decision like we saw before. So remember, what we put in this little hexagon shape, if it's true, then we run the code in here. So students, what you see in this loop right here is we're just waiting for an action, where the game is literally waiting for something to happen in order to change a variable or run some commands that make the game look different. So in this case, we want to monitor if we're touching the cat. So this is a looks sensing block, sorry. If touching, in this case we want to test if we're touching the cat. So put the touching block in there and use the down arrow. All the sprites that are now active are in this drop down list. So if we're touching the cat, what do we want to happen? Say it in words. We want to reduce the life by 1, right? So let's go to the variables block and literally use a change block. Pick the correct variable if it's not already in there. And we want to reduce the lives by 1, so we better make it -1, right? And now, just a little finesse here, we want to put a little tiny pause in there. So just wait a second for all those actions to clear out before we keep monitoring again. Here's the problem. If you don't have this wait block, then as the ball is rolling by slowly, he's touching the ball right there, but he's also touching the ball there and there and there. So if you don't wait a second, then as the ball is passing through the cat, this loop is running like hundreds of times a second, and you'll just immediately lose all your lives. So that's why we slow this thing down, and once the interaction is detected right there, then we wait a second, and hopefully that ball is past him so he doesn't get a double hit from the same ball. All right, that kind of attention to detail pops up all the time. All right, let's go check this out and see if this works. So there's our ball, and we just lost a life. Now remember, where the cat can move, he can jump over the ball if he wants to. There he is, we just avoided it. Okay, so the last part of this game is to program the collectibles so we can score. In fact, I did forget one minor detail. Whenever that ball touches the cat, we would like it to play a sound. So let's go to the sound, and we're going to say play some sound until done, and you can use the pop sound, or we can go into the sounds and let's go find a different sound. I kind of like the one there's a called a scream. So down to S, because remember the ball was just hit by a ball, so we can play out these different screams. Okay, I like that one. Okay, that works. Scream 1. Great. So we're going to have the player sound Scream 1. And you can control the volume of this. Okay, that's enough of that. We want to make sure and set the volume down to 0. So while we're developing the game, we want to have this thing screaming all the time. So let's go put a set volume block on the stage script, and we'll just set it way low. Now sometimes this doesn't work really well. Let's see if that happens. Yeah, that doesn't work so well. I'm not sure why. So while you're developing this game, you don't want to constantly hear this. Let's go just drag that block out. So this is interesting. We have a stack of 3 blocks here in our if block. We can't just drag the middle block out. So the technique here is to remove that whole chunk of code. You got to remove the bottom block so you can get this guy out, and then put that back together and put it back in. So remember, when you're all done developing your game, you can put this back in. Alright, I'll just leave it out there. Remember, this block sitting out here all by itself is unattached to any starter block, so it won't execute unless you actually click on it. Great. Well, the next sprite that we need is a collectible. I'm going to use the A for apple. Boom, that one right there. So like before, we need to do 2 scripts. One script for controlling the motion of this collectible item, and another script for controlling what happens when the cat collects it or touches it. First, let's go program the motion of this apple. So at the beginning of this, we need a forever, because we want this to repeat over and over again. First, we don't want the apple visible until we're ready for him to drop. So we're going to wait a random number of seconds, and I think that could be just like before. 1 to 3 seconds should be fine. In other words, this is the speed at which apples are appearing. Every 1, 2, or 3 seconds. So our initial starter location is, we have to have that apple go to a random location across the across the x-axis at the top. So in other words, this apple should start here, or here, or here, or here, anywhere across the stage. So we need a random number between negative 240 and positive 240, right? But 240 can be a little bit off the stage, so let's just say the maximum to the left is, say, 200, okay? And then the maximum, negative 200. And over here would be positive, roughly 200. So I'm looking at this number right here, the X location. Great. So after we wait a few seconds, we are going to position that cat at the top of the screen. So his X location is somewhere between the left full X, negative 200, and the right full side X, which is positive 200. That's the X value, and then the Y value is way up here at 180. We'll finish this last script really quickly. Every time the apple appears at the top, we want him to play a little sound. I like the pop sound, so you can just find that in the sounds library. We need the cat to be visible, and then we need him to glide from his current location down to the bottom of the screen. So we want him to glide between 1 and, say, 2 seconds. That's the speed. And the fun part is this apple to glide directly vertically down. So his X position is going to be in the motion blocks the same, and the Y position will make it about negative 100. To the bottom, he hides.